So, we learn about the disillusionment of Lue's marriage over the course of the film. And I live in West Virginia and I'm recording here in West Virginia, and foraging is a big part of the culture here as well. And I think, and people, go foraging for morels here as well. But I think that plays really well into kind of the larger themes of the movie. Um, just because especially with Lue's marriage, we see it kind of piecemeal. We find little bits as to how that happened. So can you just talk about like how those two may be like connected for you as you're playing that character?
That's a great way of putting it, foraging. I didn't really think about that. Yeah. Um, well, I think as the story goes and the film goes, Lou doesn't talk much, if any, really don't talk much about it. It's really indirectly talked about by others, and so I
Right.
think that, in a sense, is kind of like you're picking pieces from others and not necessarily from Lou. There are probably some moments where you see him able to, for example, I don't want to disclose too much of the movie. I don't know if you've
Right.
seen it or not.
Yeah, oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
Oh, you've seen it. Okay, so for
Yeah.
example, like, I think the only thing that you really get to see him that really has kind of alluded to the relationship of his previous of his relationship with his previous wife is whether it be the picture or the ultrasound. I think those are
Yeah, the
really,
ultrasound. Yeah.
yeah. Otherwise, it's really kind of told by others around
Mhm.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think May kind of does that, especially like with one of the bigger reveals later. Gia, can you speak to just like what it's like to like make that big reveal about, yeah, about, his marriage and how that kind of fell apart?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the film itself is you hear what the actors are actually saying, but then there's always like this underlying um the unsaid parts, right? And so I think that there were all these unsaid parts leading up to that moment where she finally just said straight up, why did you cheat on her?
Yeah.
How could you, right? And so I think that's kind of part of the beauty of the film itself is, there's all these like unsaid things and you're kind of like, ooh, what's going on underneath? And then you realize that there's there's a lot of there's a lot of issues, problems that got us to this point. And I think that the film itself like slowly reveals all those
Mhm.
issues within the family dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I love the karaoke scenes and the way that they kind of go through, and we have all of these different ways in which Lou performs. Yeah, every time you go away. Can you talk, Wah, about just how that felt to kind of like, yeah, like approach this same piece of music, but in like different ways every time?
It's so funny because everybody brings up the karaoke, and that was my little backstory. That was like my most daunting, and this I would say, right, yeah, just to be up there, and I really froze, and I couldn't perform. So to be able to do it a few times, I think that played into it, would help
Mhm.
with some of the emotions. I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, there's
Um,
such tight shots. They're really in you there.
they are. I will say, Vera, my gosh, it's like people are gonna make every cracks and cranny. It's just back off. But um, yeah, so I think there was a lot of direction. Again, we all shot in one day, and so it was more of being able to know that this is a progression, right? There are days
Mhm.
where he's just enjoying it, or there are days where he's super kind of drunk and almost wasted, and there are days where he just can't do it as much as he wants to, and this is like his jam for that moment because it speaks so much emotions of
Mhm.
what's going on. And so I think it was very strategic for Vera, and then to use that specific, just like the chorus line, because it said so much without having the actors to actually show it, or the movie to show it, that kind of captured it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the movie does that a lot with just, yeah, the subtext is there rather than just telling you narratively. I think that's really, you know, a beautiful way to do that. Um, so I understand this is like the first time that a film featuring like Hmong stories has been like featured at a larger film festival. Is that correct?
We think so.
Okay, yeah.
That's our understanding.
Yeah. So how does it feel? Like, does there feel like a greater responsibility there, or is this just telling a story? And, you know, how does that kind of play into that?
I guess I'll take that one. And
Okay.
also, Vera's here now. Welcome, Vera.
Yeah,
So,
welcome.
Sorry, Emily.
No worries.
so I think for me, and then also now that the film has had its premiere and it's out in the world and having different conversations with different folks in the Hmong community, it's been really special to hear how they have reflected on it, given our portrayal as a community in other film and media. And I think that people are just really excited and also happy about this portrayal itself. And they said, you know, there's so many people that came up to me yesterday that said, oh my gosh, I saw my mom, I saw my uncles, you know, all those guys sitting around the bonfire, they were my uncles. And that really is a reflection of how far our Hmong creatives have come, how far we've come in telling our own stories, and also in being impactful in a way that, you know, Vera's interested and wants to learn more about, you know, our community. And so I think that's a testament to our 40, well, we're hitting 50 years now here in the US, but our 50 years here in the US is a testament to all the work that I think we as a community and individuals and creatives have done to get us to this point that shows a more true portrayal of who we are as a community. So I think it's extremely important that this is out in the world now and people can see themselves reflected in it.
Excellent. Yeah, Vera, as both the writer and the director, do you ever, when you're writing a film or, you know, writing a script rather, do you kind of write it coming at it from like a director's perspective, or do you just do the screenwriting first and then kind of look at it as a director when it's after, you know, once it's already been finished? Like, how do you kind of balance those two?
I mean, for this project, it's always been sort of baked into the writing, right? I think there was probably a version of the script where I tried to strip down, you know, more. I think, but I think naturally I'm writing with this directorial perspective, what we're paying attention to and how we're paying attention to it. And that's also, I think, very helpful when you share the script with other people. It helps people sort of see the movie. Yeah, I mean, the writing process, if I can just sort of like expand on that a little bit too, has been for this project, you know, like necessarily kind of dynamic because, you know, it was all about kind of making space for what is the most authentic version, right, of this situation. So I can, like, as the writer, I can create situations that are, you know, informed by my conversations and connections with Hmong friends, story consultants, our cast. But then the nuances of how, like, how is that conversation going to go, right? When mom is talking to son, like, I don't know that, right? I can have a sense of what I want to happen and I will, like, write it out. I mean, the script was all written in English with, you know, sections highlighted like this. I know this will be in Hmong language like this, so we'll have to translate it, right? But that translation process was really like story workshopping too. And so, you know, we like Wah and Q, who, you know, playing this mother son, we worked through those scenes with the translator so that it felt right to both of them, and then you know, was also serving the story. right? And it may be the story at certain points, like the story needs to adjust to account for how this conversation would really go, right? So there was that kind of, and even through, I also edited the film, and even through the editing process, when do we call in the translator and really get the full translation made of this? I was still learning things about, the nuances of these relationships based on the choices that the actors made in those conversations. Always like true to the story, right? There were no like giant plot changes that happened, but there was always this sort of, I guess the best way for me to describe it is like space, like holding space, not trying to, not needing to, not being able to fully like control every detail, right? And it was, such a thrill to finally, like when certain scenes were translated officially, right? To discover like the nuances of the language that were not there for me as a non-Hmong speaker. So
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. One of the things that I kind of love about this film is that a lot of times I think people can get kind of hung up on cultural differences, and we're dealing here with like a Hmong family in America. But there's this universality about just a person wanting to separate from their parents. And a lot of times that's shown with adolescence, that separation time that feels more, yeah, I guess, when that happens just naturally. But I kind of love that it approaches it here as an adult and making that kind of separation as an adult, which can be, I think, even more complicated. So can you talk about the experience of writing that? And then, yeah, just as actors, how do you kind of convey that as well?
let me think about this. I need a moment to think about this. Wah, do you want to start your answer?
Sure. I think okay, sure. As um, I think we like to think we're adults, right? And we wear the hats of adults, but to our parents, we will always be their children and kids. Even to this day, my mom will still call me baby boy, even though I'm like in my 40s. I'm like, I don't need to be. I think that speaks universal all across the board. Um, as well as I think this also plays into, thank you for bringing it up, that although it's a Hmong family spoken in Hmong, this is really relatable in so many levels because it's really about family and interpersonal relationship conflicts, with layers of cultural nuances and just different beliefs. But all in all, I think that is what is going to resonate with viewers is, yeah, maybe that character seems like my mom, like I'm kind of like Lue because I plug out when I am checked out and I need to be checked out because I need my own space. And so drawing from those and coming from lived experience that were very similar, to me, it was not too far, I guess not too far of a stretch because I was able to, yeah, that sounds like my mom, and yeah, that's what I would do. So I think that in that sense, it helped me as an actor to hold in those emotions and those experiences. Um, and even relationship with like my siblings, sorry, and the character May, I can bring out to that because we do have that kind of sibling, not rivalry, but kind of expectation from each other. Like, no, you're the son, or no, you're the daughter. So why don't you do it? Because that's how we're taught to do it, right? Like, this is your role. This is so it's very written that's personal for me as an actor that I can pull into those experiences and kind of help bring and flesh out the characters. At least I hope I did. I don't know. I hope that answered the questions a little bit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I mean, I like this word that you used, Wah, of like expectations, right? Um, and I think in the writing process, I mean, I certainly like, probably most people have loving but complex, maybe many people have this, right? Relationships with my parents. But I also thought a lot about, I have two small children, and I thought a lot about, and I have a son, and what my hopes are for him, and how he will also be his own person. He already is his own person, and trying to imagine, you know, what what that is like, right? As a parent, I think that kind of informed some of the writing, just connecting to that, like the generational thing, and like the passing on the legacy thing, and because it's very human, right, to just to want things for your children, and to hope for things for them, and but also this thing of like letting go, which um all you can do is what you can do, and you can't control, right, beyond that. So
Yeah, I think I was just gonna add, I mean, I echo what Wa and Vera are saying. It was funny because we've talked about this on set, but then also it was funny to see the cast and crew again finally, and saying, and seeing this in its totality and its completion, but laughing with each other, talking about how art imitates life, and how a lot of our characters are so similar to us in real life. And so a lot of it was like when we were watching the film last night, my partner looking over at me and going, I've heard that exact tone before, with me. And so I think it was a, obviously we're playing a character, but also those accessing those emotions were very real. And then to the point of Wa and Vera, I think that there are cultural nuances for sure that we're displaying. And also, I think the gist of it, as you mentioned, Alise, is these emotions are very human. So these emotions of depression, or these emotions of anger, or these emotions of, I want the best for my children. These are all human emotions that we're dealing with here. So while it's a film about the small family, it is very human.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's always one of the things that I love, are the more specific a movie is, I think the more universal it can become. At least that's my experience as a viewer, is some of the films that I connect with most intimately personally are the ones that are told from such a personal, level and everything. And I felt that watching Bitterroot. So congratulations to you on that. Um, one of the things too is this is just such a really intimate film, and there are so many just really tight shots. We talked about that a little bit with the karaoke scene. But then, so how is as a director, do you make decisions on when to get really in there and when to kind of pull back? And then as actors, how does it feel to like be so exposed, and how does that, like, yeah, I guess, inform your performances?
well, to the first part of the question, like, this the conversation with Ki Jin Kim, the cinematographer and one of the producers as well, was really about space, right? And how do we experience space physically, emotionally, right? When do these characters feel really confined, trapped, right? And when do they feel the sort of freedom, or the autonomy, right? The kind of room to breathe. And so in the domestic spaces, things are, a bit more compressed, right? The frame is tighter. And then we have like these release moments. So I think a lot about like this, a compression and release. And yeah, and for karaoke, we kind of built this, getting very close to getting farther away, kind of just to sort of, um, um, giving Lue space, making him actually think he's sort of more vulnerable when we're wider in those scenes, right? More sort of exposed. Um, so yeah, I mean, that was kind of the guiding idea in general with the approach to camera placement and shot size. Yeah, and I don't know, like, yeah, if you want to talk about how exposed you felt, I think why, like, you didn't look at any of the dailies, right? You were just like, no thanks, I don't need that. Um, but they knew what, you know, is important, that everyone knew, you know, what part of their body was in the frame, right? But yeah.
Yeah, and this is my insecurity. So I don't like seeing myself in film. It's and especially when it's close up, you know, it's just I think this is kind of insecurity thing that I think a lot of people maybe I would probably don't like to see that. So it's good that I didn't look at the dailies, and all I know that okay, this is a close up. Okay, it's further away. That's all I needed to know. I didn't know how close. But as a performer, I know that if it is going to be close, I have to tone it down with my so just like the subtle movements where I want to tell through subtle movements and not make it big. It's like theater 101 type of thing that my teachers have always been taught. And I as much as I don't like close up, whether it be me or others, but I do like it because it's very personal. So it's like Vera said, confined, but there's a reason for that, and there's like expression that should be conveying, right? I mean, there's got to be a purpose why there's this close up, and it has to mean something. So I try to put that in that mind frame is like what's going on, because the viewers are going to be curious to know what's going through the character's mind, face, and how they're reacting, their internal dialogue that's not spoken.
I actually thought of exposure in a different way because I think for me it's I come at it in a different perspective, since I actually have a full-time job where I'm on TV a lot, and people have access to my life and my internal worlds. Like, I put it out there to the world, and so I think this is just another extension, and it's a different path, and it's a new creative path for me that I'm super interested in and had a really, really positive experience. And so I think I feel like exposed already. So all of this was pretty normal for me. I mean, just a different experience in a different way of exposing myself, I guess. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time today. I really appreciate you getting here with me and talking about this film and your work on it. And yeah, congratulations on the premiere. And yeah, I wish you well with the, you know, the rest of the festival.
Thank you for
Thank you
speaking
so
with us.
much. Thank you for your
Thanks for your
questions.
time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye.
day.
Bye.